There is a receipt. Not a metaphor, not a feeling, not an opinion, a literal, physical, dated receipt from a pawn shop with a man's signature on it. And that receipt might be the single most damning piece of evidence in the entire collapse of what was sold to us as one of hip-hop's greatest love stories. The man who built his entire public identity around being the loyal husband who waited 6 years for his wife to come home from prison. The man who made black love his brand, his shield, and his meal ticket. Allegedly walked into a pawn shop and traded his wife's jewelry for cash while she was the one paying every bill in the house. And the date on that receipt is not random. The date on that receipt tells you exactly why he did it, and once you understand the date, you understand that everything you thought you knew about this marriage was a performance designed to keep you from looking at what was actually happening behind the curtain. Remy Ma was never the one who destroyed this relationship. She was the one being drained by it. And now there is another woman standing in the exact same position Remy stood in for over a decade, smiling on red carpets, calling this man her protector. And she has no idea that the playbook being run on her right now is the exact same playbook that was run on the last woman, upgraded, rebranded, and dressed up in a new $8 million suit. Claressa Shields, you need to pay very close attention to what I am about to break down in this video, because the pattern is not speculation. It is documented. It is dated. And it is sitting in a pawn shop database right now with a signature on it. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now, before we go any further, I need to set the stage properly because I know a lot of y'all have been following this situation in pieces, a clip here, a headline there, a TikTok summary that told you the broad strokes, but left out the architecture. And trust me, the architecture is where the whole story lives. So let me take you back. Remy Ma and Papoose, real name Shamil Mackey, got together around 2004. By 2007, Remy was involved in a shooting that resulted in an 8-year prison sentence, of which she served 6. They married over the phone while she was incarcerated, and when she was released in 2014, the narrative was set in stone. Papoose was the devoted husband who held her down, who waited, who sacrificed. That narrative became their brand. They renewed their vows not once but multiple times, once in 2015 at a banquet hall in Connecticut, and again in 2018 on their 10-year anniversary. They had a daughter together, Reminisce Mackenzie, born in December 2018. They were on reality television. They were doing interviews about how to make a blended family work. They were the poster couple for Black love and hip-hop, and that poster was hung in every publication, every blog, every gossip column that needed a feel-good story about loyalty and commitment. But here is what nobody was asking while that poster was hanging: who was paying for the frame? Because the financial reality of this marriage was never what was presented. Remy Ma was the breadwinner. Remy Ma was the one with the career momentum, the television deals, the music revenue, the endorsement opportunities. Papoose had a $1.5 million record deal with Jive Records back in 2007, a deal he himself later called the worst mistake of his life, a deal that folded and sent him, in his own words, back to the street. That was nearly 2 decades ago. And since that deal collapsed, what has been the sustained source of income? What has been the job? Because from where I am sitting, and from what Remy herself has told us, this man positioned himself as her manager, took a percentage of her earnings, she said 20% out of her check, and then still had her paying all the bills on top of that. Think about that structure for a second. Your husband is your manager. Your husband takes a cut of your income as a management fee. And then you are still the one paying the mortgage, the car notes, the children's expenses, the lifestyle. You are essentially paying your husband to help you provide for a household that he is not financially contributing to. That is not a marriage. That is an arrangement. And the reason this matters right now, in this moment, is that the pawn shop receipt is not an isolated incident of a man making a bad decision. It is the visible crack in a system that was operating underneath the Black love branding the entire time. The stakes here are personal, cultural, and systemic all at once. Personally, a woman was allegedly being stolen from by the person she trusted most. Culturally, an entire narrative about Black male fidelity and sacrifice that was celebrated and idolized for years was allegedly a cover story. And systemically, this is about how the entertainment industry allows certain men to build careers and public identities on the backs of women whose talent and labor actually generate the revenue. That is the conversation we are about to have, and I need you to stay with me for every second of it because the layers go deeper than you think. So let's start with what we can see. Let's start with the receipts, literally. The first piece of surface evidence is the pawn shop receipt itself, which Remy Ma posted publicly on social media. She did not vaguely accuse him. She did not say, "He took my stuff." She posted documentation, a receipt showing items pawned, with a signature and with dates. And according to multiple reports, these receipts span from 2023 into 2024. That is not a one-time lapse in judgment. That is a pattern. Remy herself said she had to get the police involved because her jewelry was insured, which means when you pawn insured jewelry that does not belong to you, you are creating a paper trail that intersects with law enforcement, insurance claims, and potential fraud investigations. This is not gossip. This is documentation. And the internet did what the internet does. They gave him a name. Papoose. And honestly, when the entire internet collectively decides to rename you based on your documented behavior, that nickname is earned. That is not a random insult. That is a cultural verdict. The second piece of evidence is Remy Ma's own video statements, which were widely circulated across social media platforms in December 2024. In these videos, she did not speak in generalities. She was specific. She said her jewelry was missing from her jewelry box. She said it left the house the last time he was there. She asked, on camera, why her jewelry was not where it was supposed to be. She talked about the 20% he was taking from her check as her manager while she still paid all the bills. She talked about him not wanting to sign paperwork, not wanting to get his things out of his ex's house, not being there for his child. These are not vague, emotional complaints from a bitter ex. These are itemized, specific allegations about specific behaviors, and they paint a picture of a man who is comfortable operating in the shadows of his wife's financial infrastructure while presenting a completely different face to the public. The third piece of evidence is the gambling allegations. Remy Ma explicitly accused Papoose of having a gambling problem, and she connected that gambling problem to the financial drain on the household. Now, I want to be clear, I cannot independently verify the severity of any gambling issue, and I am not diagnosing anyone. But I can tell you that when a spouse publicly accuses you of a gambling problem in the context of missing jewelry and pawn shop receipts, the connection is not hard to draw. You pawn things when you need quick cash. You need quick cash when your expenditures outpace your income. And if gambling is part of the expenditure column, then the math starts to explain itself. The receipts are not the disease. The receipts are the symptom. And the disease is a man who has allegedly been living beyond his own means on someone else's dime for a very long time. The fourth piece of surface evidence, and this is the one that I think people are sleeping on, is the timeline. Papoose filed for divorce from Remy Ma in May, citing irreconcilable differences, and also accused her of cheating with battle rapper Easy the Block Captain. But here is what you need to understand about that timeline. The public drama exploded in December 2024, and the pawn shop receipts are dated before the public explosion. Which means the alleged pawning was happening while the marriage was still technically intact, while the black love image was still being maintained, while he was still presumably acting as her manager and taking his cut. He was allegedly stealing from her while smiling next to her. And the divorce filing only came after Remy went public. I want you to sit with that. The man who is claiming he wanted out apparently only filed after the woman he was allegedly draining decided to speak up. Does everybody understand how crazy that actually is? And oh, do I have more for you? Because if you think the pawn shop situation is just about Remy Ma, you are missing the entire point of this story. The pawn shop situation is about a pattern, and that pattern did not stop when Remy walked away. It found a new host. And the new host is a two-time Olympic gold medalist who is currently being managed by the same man who allegedly pawned his wife's jewelry. Claressa Shields fans are not going to like what is coming next, but they need to hear it. Now we move into the cultural layer, and this is where it gets really uncomfortable. The first piece of cultural evidence comes from Claressa Shields' own former best friend, a woman known online as Nigeria, or Anai the Goat. This is not a random blogger. This is someone who was in Claressa's inner circle, someone who had direct access and first-hand knowledge of what was happening behind the scenes. And Nigeria came forward publicly with explosive claims. She alleged that Papoose pawned off Claressa's Chanel purse. A Chanel purse. Not a cheap accessory, a luxury item that costs thousands of dollars. And the allegation is that this happened while Claressa was reportedly financing an international trip for the two of them. So let me get this straight. The woman is paying for the trip, and the man is allegedly pawning her purse? Does that sound familiar to anyone? Does that sound like a pattern that we have maybe seen before in a different marriage with different jewelry? Because it sounds identical to me. Nigeria also alleged that Claressa is the one paying for everything in the relationship, and that Papoose bought her a purse for her 30th birthday, but allegedly kept another one. The details are messy, but the through line is crystal clear. The financial dynamic that Remy Ma described, the man benefiting from the woman's resources while presenting himself as the provider, appears to be replicating itself in real time with the new woman. The second piece of cultural evidence is Claressa Shields' own response to the allegations, which was telling in what it revealed about her emotional state. When the purse allegations surfaced, Claressa did not deny them with documentation. She did not produce receipts showing the purse was in her possession. She crashed out on her former best friend online. She went after Nigeria publicly instead of addressing the substance of the claim. And I say this with respect, that is a defensive reaction, not an empowered one. A woman who is truly in control of her financial situation and certain about her partner's integrity does not need to attack the messenger. She can simply show the facts. The fact that the response was emotional escalation rather than evidence-based clarification tells you something about where her head is at, and it tells you that the questions being raised are hitting nerves that are already raw. The third piece of cultural evidence is the relationship between Papoose and Claressa going public, and the way it intersects with the $8 million deal. According to All Hip Hop and multiple other outlets, Claressa Shields signed a historic $8 million minimum guaranteed multi-fight partnership with Salida Promotions and Win Records. She became the first athlete signed to the agency. And here is the detail that should make every single person watching this video sit up straight. Win Records, the music promotion agency that is part of this deal, houses several artists, including Papoose. Papoose Records is affiliated with this deal structure. So the man who is dating Claressa Shields is also embedded in the business infrastructure of her biggest career contract. He is not just her boyfriend. He is her manager. He is her promoter. And he is connected to the label side of the deal. When you combine romantic involvement with financial management with label affiliation, you are looking at a web of entanglement that makes it almost impossible to distinguish where the relationship ends and the business begins. And that is exactly the position that allows exploitation to thrive unchecked. Now, I know somebody is going to say, well, Claressa is a grown woman. She is a champion boxer. She can handle herself. And I hear that. I understand that argument. But let me dismantle it right now, because it is the same argument that was made about Remy Ma. Remy Ma is not a weak woman. Remy Ma survived prison, rebuilt her career, became a television personality, and maintained her brand through years of adversity. She is as tough as they come. And she still allegedly got drained for over a decade. Strength is not a defense against manipulation. Toughness does not protect you from someone who controls your finances, isolates you from your friends, which Remy explicitly accused him of doing, and positions himself as the gatekeeper to your career. Claressa Shields can bench press a truck and still be vulnerable to a man who has turned financial dependency into an art form. The muscle does not matter when the man has access to the accounts. And the fourth piece of cultural evidence is Lil Wayne's reaction, which, while brief, captured the cultural instinct perfectly. When told during a Rolling Stone interview that Papoose was now dating Claressa Shields, Wayne said, and I quote, "He likes somebody that could beat his ass." Now, people laughed at that. It was a funny moment. But underneath the humor was a very real observation. Wayne was pointing out the dynamic that everyone can see but nobody wants to say out loud. This man moves toward women who are at the top of their game, women who have resources, women who have public profiles that he can attach himself to. The pattern is not accidental. It is strategic. And the culture is starting to see it, even if it is seeing it through jokes and memes. But the jokes are the preview. The full picture is what we are about to get into right now, because what is happening here is not just about two relationships. It is about a system. Alright, I need everyone to lean in right now because we are about to shift gears, and this is the part of the video where we leave the gossip behind and get into the actual machinery. Because here is what I have realized after going through all of this research and cross-referencing the timelines, the deals, the career histories, and the public statements. The Papoose situation is not a relationship story. It is a business story. It is a story about how a man with no sustained independent income stream engineered a career out of proximity to women who had income streams, and how the entertainment industry structure made that not only possible but socially rewarded. Let me break this down across three systemic angles, because each one alone is concerning, but when you see all three together, you understand the full architecture. The first angle is the management as control mechanism. Papoose was Remy Ma's manager. He took a percentage of her earnings. That is not unusual in the entertainment industry. Spouses manage spouses all the time. But what is unusual, and what Remy herself described, is a structure where the manager husband takes his percentage and the wife still pays all the household expenses. In a normal management arrangement, the manager takes their cut and the artist keeps the rest to live on. In this arrangement, the artist was paying the manager's fee and carrying the entire household financial load. That means the manager was effectively double-dipping, taking management income while having zero personal financial obligation to the household he was living in. And here is the systemic point. The entertainment industry does not regulate spousal management arrangements. There is no oversight body that says, wait, this artist is paying her manager husband 20% while also paying every bill, and the manager husband has no independent revenue source. The industry just sees a management contract and moves on. The vulnerability is built into the structure, and a person who is inclined to exploit that vulnerability has a roadmap sitting right in front of them. Now, Claressa Shields has Papoose as her manager and promoter. The same structure, the same arrangement, the same potential for the exact same dynamic. And this time, it is compounded by the fact that his label, Papoose Records, is affiliated with the Win Records side of her $8 million deal. So he is not just taking a management percentage, he is potentially positioned to benefit from the label side of the agreement as well. The entanglement is deeper, the money is larger, and the oversight is the same, which is to say, non-existent. The second angle is what I call the career proximity grift, and I want to be very specific here. Papoose's own career history is instructive. He signed a $1.5 million deal with Jive Records in 2007 that he himself called the worst mistake of his life. The deal folded. He went independent. He released music, he did mixtapes, he stayed visible, but the sustained, major revenue never materialized in the way that $1.5 million deal suggested it would. He has been talking about that $1.5 million for nearly 20 years. And the industry gave him a lifeline. He was appointed head of hip-hop at TuneCore, which was described as leading the artist ambassador program for hip-hop and rap, scouting new talent, and overseeing artist education. That is an advisory role. It is a title. But does it generate the kind of income that sustains the lifestyle he was presenting publicly? Because from the outside, and from what Remy has described, the answer appears to be no. The consistent revenue stream in his life has been the women he attaches himself to. First Remy, now Claressa. And the industry does not flag this, because the industry does not care where the money comes from as long as the person is visible and active. The system rewards proximity to power, not independent generation of power, and a person who understands that can build an entire career on standing next to the right people. The third angle is the narrative manufacturing apparatus, and this is the one that I think is the most insidious. Remy Ma, in her public statements, explicitly accused Papoose of maintaining the black love image to protect himself from scrutiny. She wrote that he would do anything to keep the black love image I helped build for you. She accused him of trying to isolate her from friends and family to maintain that facade. Think about what that means systemically. A public narrative was constructed through reality television, through interviews, through social media, through vow renewals, that served as a shield against anyone who might question the financial dynamics of the marriage. If you are seen as the ultimate loyal husband, the man who waited 6 years, the pillar of black love, then nobody is going to ask why your wife is paying all the bills. Nobody is going to ask why you are pawning jewelry. Nobody is going to ask where your income actually comes from. The narrative is the cover. And this is a systemic problem in celebrity culture. We manufacture narratives, and then we refuse to interrogate them because the narrative feels good. The black love story felt good. It was affirming. It was inspiring. And it was allegedly a smokescreen. The same machinery is now being deployed with Claressa, the couple's interviews on The Breakfast Club, the public displays of affection, the narrative of the rapper, and the boxer finding love. It is the same playbook with a new cover photo. And the media runs the story because the story gets clicks, without ever asking the structural questions that would reveal the pattern underneath. Does everybody understand what we are really talking about here? Because this is not about one man being a bad husband. This is about a system that rewards narrative construction over financial transparency, that celebrates image over substance, and that leaves women, even the strongest, most accomplished women in the world, vulnerable to exploitation dressed up as partnership. Now here it is. Here is the thing that ties everything together, and I want you to hear this clearly because this is the moment the whole picture comes into focus. The pawn shop receipt dated November 6, 2024, and I want to be careful here because I am working with what has been publicly reported and displayed, so I will say reportedly. The date on that receipt is November 6, 2024. And that date matters. That date is not a random Tuesday. According to the research that has been done across multiple commentary channels and social media investigations, November 6th is the birthday of Papoose's daughter, his adult daughter. A daughter who, according to Remy Ma's own descriptions, was raised with a sense of entitlement, who, along with the other children in the blended family, had been accustomed to a lifestyle that was funded not by their father's income, but by their stepmother's income. Remy herself said these kids felt entitled. She said they thought it was normal to lose a phone and get a new $1,200 replacement. She said they thought having a vehicle each was just how life works. And Papoose, in his own statements, talked about coming from the streets of Brooklyn, growing up in poverty, and making sure his kids did not struggle like he did. That is a powerful instinct. Every parent wants better for their children. But here is the devastating question: who is actually funding that better? It was not his career. It was not his $1.5 million deal from 2007 that collapsed. It was not his TuneCore advisory position. It was his wife. It was Remy Ma's money, Remy Ma's brand, Remy Ma's labor that was providing the lifestyle that his children had become accustomed to. And when that money was no longer accessible, when the marriage was deteriorating, when Remy was no longer willing to be the financial engine, when the relationship was heading toward public collapse, the entitlement machine did not stop. The kids still expected the lifestyle. The birthdays still needed to be celebrated at the level they had become accustomed to. And the man who had built that expectation had no independent income to meet it. So, what do you do when you have created a lifestyle for your children that you cannot afford? The woman who is funding it is no longer cooperating, and you have a gambling problem and no salary. If the allegations are accurate, you go to the pawn shop. You take your wife's insured jewelry. You sign the receipt. You get the cash. And you maintain the image. That is the truth bomb. The pawn shop receipt is not about greed. It is about a man who built an entire life on someone else's money, created expectations he could not independently meet, and when the money tap was being shut off, he allegedly chose theft over honesty, chose maintaining the facade over admitting the reality. And that pattern, the pattern of maintaining image at the expense of the person funding it, is now being replicated with Claressa Shields. The $8 million deal. The management position. The label affiliation. The public appearances. The Breakfast Club interview where he called her his best friend. The same architecture, the same scaffolding, the same structure that allegedly turned Remy Ma into an ATM is being rebuilt around a new woman who is at the peak of her earning power. And Claressa's ex-best friend is already telling us the purse is missing. The alarm is ringing. The question is whether anyone is going to hear it before the receipt surfaces with a new signature on it. And this is where I want to bring it home. Because through all of this darkness, through all of this deception and manipulation, there is a person who is standing taller today than she has in years, and that is Remy Ma. Let me walk you back through this story through her lens. She married a man while she was in prison. She believed in the narrative. She invested in the relationship, in the family, in the brand. She carried the financial weight. She allowed herself to be managed by her husband. She renewed her vows, went on television, smiled for the cameras, and built what the culture celebrated as a love story for the history books. And then she discovered, allegedly through missing jewelry and pawn shop receipts, that the man she had built all of that with was allegedly stealing from her while smiling next to her. That is a devastating realization. But here is what makes Remy Ma the hero of this story. She did not stay silent. She did not protect the image. She did not keep the facade alive for the sake of the brand. She went public. She posted the receipts. She named the behavior. She called him Pawn Puss on the internet for everyone to see, and she dared him to lie about it. She said, as soon as he starts lying, she starts dropping receipts. That is not a woman who is broken. That is a woman who is done being a resource. She accused him of trying to isolate her from friends and family. She accused him of weaponizing her gangster girl image against her. She accused him of using the black love narrative as a shield. And she said she had been asking for a quiet divorce for years, and he refused. He wanted the public blow-up. He wanted the spectacle, because the spectacle was the only thing that could distract from the financial reality. Remy Ma walked away from a situation that was allegedly draining her financially, emotionally, and spiritually, and she did it with documentation. She did it with evidence. She did it with the kind of precision that tells you this is not a woman acting out of spite, this is a woman acting out of survival. One person was allegedly stealing jewelry from the jewelry box while his wife paid every bill in the house. The other person was working, earning, building, and carrying an entire family's financial weight on her back. That contrast tells you everything you need to know about who was the anchor and who was the barnacle in this relationship. And Remy Ma's position now, free from the management arrangement, free from the financial drain, free from the obligation to maintain a narrative that was allegedly built to protect someone else's reputation, is the strongest position she has been in since before she went to prison. She is the one who spoke up. She is the one who documented. She is the one who pulled the curtain back on the entire operation. And the culture is better for it because now every woman who is in a similar situation, a spouse who manages them, controls the finances, maintains a public image that does not match the private reality, has a blueprint for what it looks like to say enough and walk away with the evidence in your hand. That is hero behavior. Not because it was easy, because it was necessary. And listen, this is only the start. Because if you think this story is wrapping up neatly, you are not paying attention to the timeline. There are at least 2 developments coming that you need to be watching for. The first is the Claressa Shields situation. If the pattern holds and patterns like this do not break without intervention, there will be more allegations. There will be more questions about where money is going, who is paying for what, and what happens when the $8 million deal money starts moving through the management and label infrastructure that Papoose is embedded in. Claressa's ex-best friend has already gone public. The purse allegations are already out there. The next shoe will drop. It always does. The second development is the divorce itself, which has been reportedly delayed. Remy Ma has said she wanted a quiet divorce for years, and the proceedings are still ongoing. There are reportedly reasons the divorce is being held up, and those reasons, when they come out, will add another layer to this story that nobody is expecting. I have been saying this since the beginning of the saga, and I will keep saying it. The receipts are coming, and when they do, the people who defended this man are going to have to reckon with the fact that the evidence was sitting in a pawn shop the entire time. So if you have made it to this point in the video, you're amazing, and I need you to do something for me. I need you to subscribe right now, hit that notification bell, because the moment the next piece of this story breaks, I am going to be the first one to break it down for you with the same level of depth and analysis you got today. And if you think this was deep, wait until you see what I have coming next, because there is a video dropping soon about what allegedly really happened behind the scenes of that $8 million deal, and the names connected to it are going to surprise you. There is a connection between the label structure and the relationship timeline that nobody has connected yet, and when I lay it out, you are going to understand why every move in this story was never about love and was always about leverage. You are not going to want to miss that one. Trust me on that.